Welcome friends to another Dune video. Today we will look at the climatic battle from Frank Herberts Dune between the Emperor and his Harkonnen allies holding Arakeen, Dune's capital, as Paul and the Fremen plot to take it and Arrakis as a centre of power back. Spoilers for Dune throughout, let's get into it. Paul and Stilgar, through a slit in the shield wall, a mountainous feature that protects the city of Arakeen from the planet's storms, see the temporary housing for 5 legions of Sardaukar and the Emperor. Paul took one final look around through the telescope, studying the plain, with its tall ships, the gleaming metal houses, the silent city, the frigates of the Harkonnen mercenaries. Stilgar tells Paul the Sardaukar they captured and released is going to the Emperor. The storm has tied down the Thopters that are housed out near the Emperor's houses and the Harkonnen frigates. Gurney mentions the fleet in space as a source of danger, but Paul says, "We can destroy the spice. The Guild dares not risk that." Paul discovered that by placing the water of life, a liquid taken from a drowning sandworm, just before its death above a pre-spice mass, it would kill the sandworms that made the spice. Gurney then tells Paul he's worried about the atomics being used. Paul says, "The injunction, it's fear, not the injunction that keeps the houses from hurling atomics against each other. The language of the Great Convention is clear enough. Use of atomics against humans shall be cause for planetary obliteration. We're going to blast the shield wall, not humans." Stilgar says he never knew the Fremen in the city could be completely trusted. Paul says the test of a man is what he does, and they will teach them to escape their bondage. The Sardaukar have pushed the city Fremen from their homes to hurt Paul's forces with refugees, but have instead stoked hatred for the Imperial forces. Paul says he will use them as shock troops. Gurney counters that they will be slaughtered. Paul replies that every Sardaukar they kill will be one less of his own forces. So in his own way, Paul is using them like the Sardaukar were, pawns for his battle. The Sardaukar they released has arrived now. There is a field around the landing area, so he must have warned the Emperor about what was going to happen as planned. Paul is told the Sardaukar and Harkonnen patrols are pulling back. Stilgar confirms this is because the sand will spill into the basin, reducing visibility, and that this will affect the Fremen the same. Paul says his people must set the sights on the ships to knock the nose off each before visibility drops, so they can shoot as soon as the shields have been destroyed by the storm. Paul pulls back the south wall observers and shouts to Gurney, "Now!" It seemed that a full second passed before they felt the ground beneath them ripple and shake. A rumbling sound was added to the storm's roar. The wall was breached. The storm was entering the city, and the Fremen gunners were taking out their targets. Paul thought of the storm sweeping across the basin, the static charge within the wall of sand that destroyed every shield barrier in the enemy camp. I think this is why they released the Sardaukar earlier, so the Emperor would get a warning and put up the shields, so the storm can then knock them out. With those shields up, once the storm had passed, perhaps there would be a danger otherwise of the shields coming up and hurting the Fremen plan. Paul and the Fremen retreat from the storm and seal off the tunnel, and it is then Paul hears through a communication that there has been an attack on Siege Tabor by Sardaukar, that his baby son Leto is dead and his sister Alia captured. He felt grief, a shell without emotions. Everything he touched brought death and grief, and it was like a disease that could spread across the universe. He could feel the old man wisdom, the accumulation out of the experiences from countless possible lives. Something seemed to chuckle and rub its hands within him, and Paul thought how little the universe knows about the nature of real cruelty. The voices are from the other memory Paul has access to as the Kwisatz Haderach. It allows Paul to access the memories of all the men and women who were his ancestors. dust poured into the city. The Sardaukar fought with the Fremen as they emerged from the storm, and then, through the haze, the mouths of sandworms could be seen. Fremen, riding them, cut through the melee fighting and moved towards the Emperor's housing. The Sardaukar were awed by the sight. The Fremen leapt from the worms' backs, but the Sardaukar were hard men, trained soldiers, and so they faced them to buy their Emperor time. But the Emperor was made to retreat back to his ship. With the city of Arakeen in his grip, Paul and the Fremen meet the Emperor, and Paul says he will destroy spice unless the Emperor abdicates, as many who need it look on. Paul is challenged by and kills Fade Routher, a Harkonnen, and then Paul agrees to marry the Emperor's daughter, Irulan, and take the Lion Throne. So now I turn this over to you. Could the Emperor's forces have done something different, or would the Fremen plan have worked anyway? Have you heard whispers from other memory? Comment down below.